Audiences love to relate to fictional characters, whether it's on TV, in a movie, in a book, or on a stage. They see themselves in someone else. They see the world through their eyes, hear their emotions and thoughts, how they react to different things. The age group that's most likely to do this is kids, teens, and young adults. Not only do they intake the most forms of entertainment and media, but they also are susceptible to learn through observation. They see someone that they relate to and that they admire do something, and they follow suit, even subconsciously. So, what happens when a young teenage viewer sees their favorite, most relatable character harm themselves, or to an extreme, commit suicide? It would be a stretch to think that this viewer would follow the actions of a fictional character in this situation, wouldn't it? That's what I'm here to argue. I'm going to argue that once entertainment depicts suicide in any context descriptively, suicide itself becomes contagious. I will be introducing this term, suicide contagion, and talking about two recent forms of entertainment that tackle teen suicide in a way that might promote suicide contagion. One being the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why, the other being the Broadway musical Dear Evan Hansen. After I talk about these two shows, I will then give my opinion on how the entertainment industry should move forward on this issue. At the end, I hope my audience will be persuaded to be a little more cautious about the forms of entertainment that they support that might tackle this issue. First, we must define suicide contagion, but in order to define this, I'm going to talk about the two extremes people take on this issue when it comes to triggering subjects in entertainment. On the one hand, we have some that believe that nothing should ever be censored when it comes to artistic expression, such as entertainment, that if it happens in real life, it should be able to be depicted, and that just because it might trigger or harm a couple audience members is not the reason to limit their expression. Other viewers are of the mindset that they should censor anything that might be possibly harmful for an audience member, that it should be only promoting positive experiences rather than negative ones. But neither of these opinions actually help spread suicide awareness. According to an article written by Madeline Gold, quote, the relative risk of suicide following exposure to another individual's suicide was, in the study, 2 to 4 times higher among 15 to 19-year-old individuals than other groups conducted in this study. On the other hand, according to the National Institute of Mental Health, suicide is the second highest leading cause of death between the ages of 10 and 20. These two things are not coincidental. Suicide, once it's depicted in entertainment to an impressionable audience that is already at a high risk of suicide, those two subjects become linked. Now, to talk about these forms of entertainment, I'll be introducing the first show that I'm sure many people have heard of, 13 Reasons Why. This show has sparked a lot of controversy ever since it came out. If you are unaware, this is a quick summary of the plot. It's essentially about a high school senior named Hannah Baker who committed suicide, and it goes into details on the events that led up to her suicide and the 13 reasons why she ended up taking her own life. Now, there's been many controversial scenes and moments in this show in the many seasons that it's had, but the first controversial moment came in the first season when the show actually depicts Hannah committing suicide on screen and goes into very graphic detail about how she acquired the method of committing suicide and displayed the entire process to the viewer. According to a study conducted on overdoses in film within the American Behavioral Scientists journal, quote, a depicted overdose was followed by an increase in that type of self-poisoning in 49 emergency rooms in the following week. 20% said that it influenced their decision to take an overdose, and 17% said it had influenced their choice of drug. Now, this is to say that stuff like this will not affect the random individual that has no symptoms or previous records of being susceptible to suicide or mental illness defects, but those who are already susceptible to it, like the teenage young audience, might persuade them to take such actions. The visuals of seeing someone on screen commit suicide and going into detail on how they acquired the tools to commit suicide is essentially a how-to guide. Suicide on screen might be addressing the issue, but it appears to make it much worse than it originally intended. Now, the other show I will be talking about today is one you might not be familiar with, the Broadway musical Dear Evan Hansen. This show follows a high school senior named Evan Hansen and how he longs to fit in with the people around him. But when a bully of his at school, Connor, ends up committing suicide through a very weird turn of events, people mistake Evan to have been his closest friend. Evan ends up becoming a very strong advocate for suicide prevention and teen mental illness. But what differs this show from 13 Reasons Why is that not once does it ever actually show Connor committing suicide, nor saying how he committed suicide other than suicide itself. According to an interview done in 2015 from one of the show's producers, Stacey Mindich, quote, "In early marketing meetings, we stayed away from the words like suicide and mental health for fear of being the suicide musical." And while 13 Reasons Why covers a lot of the same topics as Dear Evan Hansen didn't want to be known as the suicide musical. Instead, the aftermath of the suicide and how it affects the community around them is the focus, rather than the suicide itself, like 13 Reasons Why. This is why Dear Evan Hansen's portrayal of suicide came across as more effective and less controversial than 13 Reasons Why's did. Now, don't get me wrong, there is not a perfect fine line to draw on this issue when it comes to medium and entertainment's depiction on suicide. There will always be those who disagree and believe that something is too harsh or not harsh enough, but there must be an attempt made to spread awareness rather than suicide contagion itself. As said by Karen Horowitz from Brown University, quote, "Although the rates of adolescent suicide are very disheartening, by learning about the facts and making informed decisions, professionals and parents involved in the lives of adolescents can begin to make a difference. The best way to spread awareness is to educate and accept the fact that suicide does have the ability to affect those who are not educated correctly. So instead of depicting this suicide on stage in a visual act, it should be talked about the aftermath, the repercussions, the way it affects a community rather than a how-to guide in order to commit the act." So, to review, I have discussed the term suicide contagion and how it is portrayed in the medium. I have included two forms of entertainment that handle the situation of teenage suicide, and I've talked about how I would wish the entertainment industry could move forward in suicide awareness and prevention. Suicide is an epidemic that is only going to keep increasing until more people are knowledgeable and aware of the signs and symptoms of the mental health issues that lead to such act. And while I believe that entertainment fields such as 13 Reasons Why are handling the situation poorly, at least they're handling the situation at all. No longer can suicide be regarded as a joke or a dramatic twist in a storyline. Suicide is a fatal and easily accessible disease to teenage audiences that are prone to watching entertainment. The existence of suicide contagion can no longer be questioned. Thank you.